All right. Hey, everybody. This is Danielle. How's everyone doing today? Seems I got everything working. Well, I missed you guys while I was away. I'm sure everybody was awesome while I was gone. Looks like the market was relatively good for the most part until we got this more recent pullback. So I definitely want to start off by asking for requests, but I also would love to know what your top tickers are that you're trading right now. So I don't know, maybe if you have a request, just write request. And if you have your favorite ticker, just go ahead and type that one in. Maybe write favorite ticker. Let me know. I've been off for pretty much the longest time I have ever been off for in a row. So I don't have any trades on right now at all. And I've just been getting reacquainted with everything that's going on in the market and just trying to figure out some new ideas that I can put on. So it looks like we have a bunch of questions about Tesla, AVGO, just scalping the NASDAQ, MSTR, ONDS is a favorite. Okay, great, great. Whenever I, start doing all of my research, I pretty much do a top-down approach. So I start off with the indexes just to see what's going on with the indexes. I do feel like there's a little bit of a suspicious head and shoulders pattern here. However, the weekly chart patterns just look great. When you have a pullback like this into symmetry with the weekly squeeze and a really nice bounce there, I feel like overall that looks really good. Can't really complain too much. If you look at the S&P, you have this pullback and a bounce into the 21 EMA. So that looks pretty good. Daily chart on the S&P, this could be a perfect buy spot at the 50 simple. However, the NASDAQ just is not looking that great because we have broken through the 50 simple. So it's one of those things where it's like, weekly charts are fine, trend is still intact. Lower time frame charts, S&P looks a little bit better than the NASDAQ just because the NASDAQ has had a little bit bigger of a pullback after Broadcom earnings. NASDAQ looks a little suspicious, but because the NASDAQ has been so strong, I'm still always looking for relative strength buys in the NASDAQ. And then after that, I always look at the Mag 7s. Just in doing the research that I did yesterday, and I came back yesterday and I was listening to Henry at the close. I was pretty surprised at how much they varied, seeing as you have Tesla just exploding, you had Broadcom kind of getting destroyed. So there's a lot of variability here. So I think that my initial reaction to just what's kind of going on in the markets right now after getting back from vacation that wasn't really vacation. Um, it just looks like it's a stock pickers market to me. And it looks like things are just consolidating and getting ready to go for the next leg up. So the question here is, okay, what can we jump on and what can we focus on for the next leg up? I had been focusing a lot on just day trading, which I'm not really normally a day trader. I do primarily swing trading, but when the market is kind of consolidating like this and it's just back and forth, day trading can be more beneficial just because swing trading is typically going to be a lot easier when you have a nice trend like this. So, whenever you're in a nice trend with really easy pullbacks, swing trading is just going to be a lot easier. Once you hit this kind of situation, where the index is up and then it's down and then it's up and then it's down. This is just kind of more like a choppy range. So you really have to stick with the relative strength leaders to the upside and the relative weakness losers to the downside if you're going to do any kind of swing trades, because you just don't want to get chopped up. So this is just the kind of market environment where you can really get chopped up, which is another reason why focusing on just kinda like those end of day trades and some moments in time where you can day trade just makes a little bit more sense. So, um as far as the relative strength winners here, I mean, definitely Tesla. Tesla, this is one that I've had on the radar for a long time. I mean, we've been trying to trade this one up into the $500 strike price for what seems like forever. You can see that it's been consolidating since, I mean, this daily squeeze right here started the 8th of October, lasted all the way until November 19th. Um, it initially fired to the downside, but then it shifted and flipped to the upside, and it turned into basically a slingshot squeeze that consolidated again, and now it's breaking out. Um, so I mean, I've been bullish on Tesla. I feel a little annoyed that I'm kind of missing this final breakout. Um, but that's just kind of a function of, you know, sometimes got to step away from the market and be out of office, and that's just kind of how it's going. So at this point, coming back into it, it's like, well, this is the price target I've had on it for a long time. It's making its way there. I don't have a trade on it, so what should I do here? Um, you can always add on a butterfly at 500. Um, should I do it now after it was already up yesterday and it's up again today, another 2%? I mean, it's not the most preferable situation, but I will tell you that anytime you have a stock within a grasp of a previous all-time high, it's a pretty decent bet that it's gonna make it. Um, so I'm not totally against adding a trade here, even though I readily admit it is not a great entry. So for those of you who have been trading it, I hope you're already in it. Um, with the $500 price target and the current trade at 486.63, effectively what you want to do is you just want to watch that 488 price point, and the key here is what the ticker does when it hits that level. So if it can trade up and hit that level and then break through that zone, that's when you're going to 500. However, if it trades up into that zone and you get a big wick at the top of the candle, you have high volume selling coming in and it's just completely rejected. Um, and that's where you say, okay, my trade to 500 is not going to work. So if we just look at this and we say, all right, what can I do with this at this point? Um, I don't really have a problem with adding a trade on to 500. It's just, I'm not making a very great example for you guys because, it's definitely late to the party. So the way that you could do it is you could do like a $10 wide butterfly. At this point, it's only $1.26. So, you know, it's not it's not like a super high risk trade or anything like that. I think, to give it 3 days, you have a $21 expected move into this Friday. I think all of that makes sense. It's definitely possible and capable of hitting that level. Um, if you did it a little bit wider so that it would be more in the money, that would be a little bit of a better bet. At that point, you're going to bring your risk up to almost $3. But then at that point, you're going to have a $15 wide butterfly. So what that means is that your max profit could be $15 instead of a $10 wide butterfly where your max profit would be $10. So, I mean, I think either one of those are fine. As I'm sitting here talking about this Tesla trade, Henry's already closing his Tesla trade. So, see, that's why I'm saying I'm pretty late here. Late to the party. Um, but anyways, if you don't have anything on, and you're still trying to snatch a piece of it, I think that this is probably the best thing to do at this point. Just because it is low risk from a dollar standpoint. And it's just one of those things where it's like, It's right about to make that high. Let me look at these lower time frame charts too. It's one of those things where it's like, if it doesn't work, then you're gonna list you would risk well, anytime you get into a trade like that where you have 3 days or less, you have to risk the full amount just because if it gaps down tomorrow, I mean, it's just gonna disappear. Your premium's gonna disappear on you. You have a 15-minute squeeze. Look at that. It's so close to the all-time high. 487.25. So you have a 15-minute squeeze that's firing. And then let's see, 30-minute squeeze. So, I mean, you can see that it made the 1272 extension, and then your 1618 is gonna be at 491.44, and then your next target's gonna be at 500. Let's do 1-hour chart. Don't know what happened to my 78-minute chart. Danielle, has your family been affected by the flooding? So I mean, yes and no. I haven't gotten flooded personally. I can see the water from my house, but the water that I can see is the ocean. It's not the rivers. And what is flooding here currently is the rivers. Um, so I'm not at risk of the ocean coming over and flooding me, so that's good. However, the entire town that I'm in, the rivers have absolutely flooded. So, my son's school was canceled on Friday because of all the flooding. He said on Thursday only half of the kids were able to make it to school. And let me see if I can show you a picture. So I mean, it's just the rivers are all completely flooded. So I'm right at a spot where the rivers are meeting the ocean. And so I don't know, just like I said, like the ocean itself is not flooded. The ocean is not coming over onto the land, but it is the rivers that are all flooding over. And since I'm right by the here, let me see if I can get a good picture. So this is like right by me. But basically this is supposed to be a river and now it's like a lake. So yeah, everything is flooded around me, but it has not flooded my house or impacted me in any other way, but definitely all around me, my friends, are flooded and the rivers are flooded and everything else. But I don't know anybody whose house was specifically washed away that I know of anyway. So it's been kind of crazy here. What would your analysis of the QQQ be? What about Google? Thought I had another picture of you guys too. But yeah, I mean, there's basically just rivers. I mean, there's rivers everywhere in Washington, they come down from the mountains and they go to meet the ocean and like every single river is flooding. So it's just, I mean, it's flooded like all over the place. It's really weird because it's not just one river that's flooded. It's like every single river is flooded everywhere. So it's kind of crazy. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, I don't know if I showed you guys this one. It's like I don't even know where the river was supposed to be in that photo. Thought you were in Texas. No, I'm in Washington State. I'm, like, outside of, Mount Vernon, which is pretty severely flooded, but I don't live I'm, like, 30 minutes away, so Alright, so let's go ahead and look at some of these other requests. Let's look at Broadcom. I'm keeping an eye on the indexes here, just trying to see if there's anything going on. How about them Chiefs? Yikes. Man, what a downfall. Guess every dynasty has to end sometime, but that's alright. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to having a different team in the playoffs this year, so it's been a great run. Let's look at, so looking at Broadcom here, I mean, here's the thing is, like, I love Broadcom. When I saw this move on Friday, it's pretty destructive move after earnings. At first, when I saw the move, I was like, "Eh, whatever, not a big deal. It's just falling to the 50 simple. Yeah, it's on high volume." But the thing is like Broadcom was one of the best runs going into earnings. Um, this was a trade that I had on. It went pretty well. I didn't take it off exactly at the top. So that was a little unfortunate, but it was still a really good trade overall and a great move. Broadcom is typically a stock that will rally going into earnings, so that's good. But this is why I discuss so many times how the move going into earnings is completely different than the move after earnings. So you always want to separate, okay, what is your move going into earnings? What's your trade going into earnings? Get out of that trade, then trade the actual earnings report itself. And then after that, you can trade a post earnings move. So in the case of Broadcom, this is still one of my favorite stocks. It's still one of my top 10 stocks in my long-term portfolio. I will say that the move seemed to me like a little bit of an overreaction. With it initially down 6.5%, it wasn't that big of a deal, I would say. Yes, it has, yes, it was a larger move than what we've seen recently, but there was this one 6.3% move all the way back in here. Um, so I don't think it's that uncommon for a stock to pull back hard after an earnings report when it's had such a massive rally. So it had a huge rally going into earnings. I was only targeting 400 on it, and it even surpassed my expectations up to almost 415. So I mean, that was just a huge move from this low down here around 325. So on one hand, it's kind of expected that it would pull back after that report. Um, and that's, what it did. However, I don't like that it had 2 major days of selling. I would have preferred that it was just, one day, let's come in and buy the dip at the 50 simple. Not really what happened since it broke through the 50 simple on high volume yesterday. Today, it's at least trying. It's up 1%. For me, I would just say that I think it looks good for a long-term stock buy just for like a dollar cost average on something that, you already own. Like my entry points in Broadcom are way, way, way lower. I'd have to go back and see exactly where my last entry points are. But this is a stock that, I think in the long term is just going to continue to do well. And I like to dollar cost average on the stocks that I own. So I think it's a pretty decent spot here. Um, but as far as an options trade is concerned, I don't really see anything just because typically for an after earnings trade, I would generally want to buy momentum if it's to the upside. I'd really hate to short Broadcom. I mean, it had 2 days of downward move. Now it's trying to hold this level. I think we just see if it holds. Um if it breaks 325, that's when it's gonna be like a massive reversal. This isn't that big of a deal, but if it breaks 325, then that's the point where I would say, "Okay, This is a pretty big reversal. This isn't looking very good. Um, that kind of thing. And then if you look at the weekly chart, another reason why I would be interested in buying some more long-term stock in this is because look, it's consolidating into a weekly squeeze. A lot of these tickers right now that just aren't doing very well are in a weekly squeeze. And the weekly squeeze is my absolute favorite long-term buy signal. So I know it seems kind of crazy to say what you would buy more Broadcom here after this massive move, but it's like I mean, just look back in history over time and look at every single weekly squeeze. There's one here, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here. Every single one of these has triggered to the upside except for this one, which was all the way back in 2022, which was when the bear market occurred. So, unless there's, another bear market, which I'm not anticipating, could happen, but not anticipating, I would expect these weekly squeezes to trade to the upside. So, what that means is that on the short term basis, they're probably going to be a little bit lame um, for short term trades because what happens when you have that consolidation on the weekly time frame, the daily time frame is just so choppy. So it's like up and it's down, and it's up and it's down, and it's like, it's just not really doing anything. But then if you look at the longer term weekly price targets, you have a price target of 436 and then 450. So if you say, okay, I want to buy some shares of stock at, let's say, 330, 345, and your price target is 436, 450, you still have a ton of upside potential there. So, it's just one of those things where it's like, I think there's still good upside potential. And then if you look at, for example, Nvidia, and the indexes are trying to break out, so it might be actually a good idea to buy some. Might be a good idea to buy some Tesla if the indexes are going to start going here. Nvidia. So Nvidia is just kind of the same. I mean, it does have a little bit of a head and shoulders pattern where it's like, ugh, that daily squeeze might fire to the downside. It looks a little bit bearish. So again, I don't think it looks that favorable on a short-term frame to try to trade it to the upside. However, what's the most interesting to me here is the weekly squeeze. Again, there are some instances where the weekly squeeze can be bearish. This one right here did fire to the downside with the tariff tantrums. And then again in 2022, this one fired to the downside, but that was like the best buying opportunity of the century. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not that concerned if it does end up firing to the downside. Like, let's say it traded even down into 152. I mean, that would still be a really good buy spot in Nvidia. So I'm not gonna try to swing trade Nvidia to the upside right here because it's below the 50 simple in the daily chart. We've had multiple moving averages. I think that it's kind of hanging by a little bit of a thread here at 175. So I don't want to buy it, and I think it might fall a little bit farther, but this weekly squeeze is where it's at. So, and I mean, again, if you look at the price targets from that and you say, okay, well, we're trading at 177 right now, seems crazy to buy more Nvidia, but look, I mean, you have, a target up here, say 225, 240, 250. So there's definitely still more upside potential there. But a trade right now, not really seeing it. Let's see. Yeah, we can go back and look at Tesla. I don't like to place like super aggressive trades like right before I know if the end of day trade is going to be a buy or not, because if the end of day trade is a sell, it's like there's no reason to place an aggressive Tesla trade for overnight, you know what I mean? Um Hope everything goes well with your neighbors and friends. It should have snowed in the mountains and it rained. Had to drain downhill. Yep. Oracle in a buy zone. Do you recommend any of those very high yield dividend income ETFs? My dad spent probably 3 or 4 months of research, like really in-depth research, and he made a very detailed presentation on the, high yield dividend income ETFs, and, I told him, I was like, "Man, this should be your job, dad. You just need to come in the trading room with me." But, maybe I should just tell him that right now. Maybe he's out there, Seattle Steve. But, anyways, I did that is one of my goals for next year is to really look at that in a lot more detail and see if I can add more of those to my long-term stock portfolios. So, just have to sit down and try to focus on that and figure it out. But off of the top of my head, there's not one that just comes to mind just because that's a little bit different than what I normally do. Um, Primarily what I have been focused on ever since I started my stock portfolios is focusing on relative strength, focusing on growing industries. Um, Anything that I thought was gonna be really hot in the future. I think my biggest wins have definitely come from the semiconductors. So that was something going all the way back, to 2018 where it was like, obviously now it's obvious that the semiconductors are really hot, but at that time when I first started it, it was, "Hey, this is probably gonna be a really big growing industry." So I tend to weight the portfolios, like, pretty heavily towards more aggressive, high growth names just because I'm young and that's just kinda what I'm looking to do with it. Um, but I have more recently gotten more interested in the dividend names for income. So I'll let you know when I kinda review all of that and see if I can give you any great ideas. Did TG take photos flying in his airplane? Those are just from Facebook groups from neighbors. Yeah, TG lives like an hour away from me. AVGO is a buy now for the long term. All right, let me see. Just trying to scroll through all these questions. Just buy the S&P, no need to overcomplicate it. So, funny story, I had a test portfolio in Acorns. It's like this app that you can just automatically buys like the S&P for you. And I was looking at it today because people always say that, right? It's like, why don't you just automatically buy the S&P? And so I have been doing that just for because I always have people ask me like, "Hey, what's the easiest way to buy stocks?" I'm like, "Oh, you could use this app Acorn and it just automatically buys them for you." My Acorn portfolio that I have done 0 adjustments with is only up 16% this year. It's like, "Really?" I mean, it's kind of a waste of money, to be honest. Just kind of a waste of money, so I don't know. I was testing it against the one I was actually creating myself, and it's like there's no comparison. Over for my Acorns portfolio, again, this is the one that literally is not selected by me. It just automatically invests you in the S&P. Over 5 years, it's only up 57%. Like, that's just I mean, it's like, why bother? I don't know. So you might as well, I don't know. That's why I like to try the stock picking. I'll take my chances because 'cause I've always beaten the market in my long-term stock portfolio ever since I started it, so okay. So for um Google right here, I think that this one's a pretty good shot of trading higher back up into the previous high, but I don't like the fact that this 195-minute squeeze is trading to the downside today. So, not a huge fan of that. Um, Not a huge fan of that. I do like this 195-minute squeeze, but I don't like that it's kinda trading to the downside today. We also have some multiple moving average crosses here. So the few tickers that have been relative strength to the upside have been, Tesla. Okay, we're just gonna get in this Tesla trade right now. All right, let's do it. The ones that have been relative strength to the upside have been Tesla and Google, but Google's just not really doing a whole lot today. So I'm gonna do the 490, 500, 510. Google, Tesla just made a new all-time high. I'm just gonna see if I can get a little bit of follow through going into tomorrow. Tomorrow and the next day. Basically, what you want is you want for the ticker to go up above your first strike. So the first strike is 490, then 500, then 510. So you want it to go up above 490 and trade up into 500. The underlying security is hard to borrow. Boom. That means it's a short squeeze, my friends. To open, this is a bullish Tesla trade as it hits new all-time highs. Note that this entry is very aggressive. However, I am trying to ride the momentum and trade it to 500 this week. Come on, give me a fill. So the hard to borrow is really helpful because what that means is that it's a short squeeze. So the higher that it goes, hopefully the higher it goes, if that makes sense. The higher it goes, the higher it goes. That's what we want. And then you see how there's 113,000 contracts right there at the $500 strike. You just basically want for there to be you want there to just be like movement up into that strike. Yeah, let me see what I can do about the SPX. So we are through 6,800. Definitely get some buying. 34 Pacific time. Is Bill Gates still short? Boom. Let's go. Nice candle here. Um There's not really one strike that's standing out is the thing. I saw you streaming on X and I moved to YouTube. Where else are you streaming to? I think it's streaming to Facebook and LinkedIn, but I think the best one is on YouTube. And then the main place that I'm streaming in is in the Simpler Trading Mastering the Trade Room because this is a copy of that. So one time per week, I do a live stream of my Simpler Trading Mastering the Trade Room session. And the indexes are just continuing to climb higher. Let me see what I can do here. I mean, for the end of day trade, we could do like a 68.20 fly. We're really close to the high on the day. The NASDAQ looks like the NASDAQ just broke the high on the day. There's still a lot of time left. There's still 24 minutes left. Let's see about this. I mean, it's really moving. JC, go baby, go. Seems like 68.25 just seems like a little bit too, I mean, we could try this. All right, so if we do a let's just do this. 68.10, 68.20, 68.30. Come on, give me a fill. Man, it's really going. I don't know if I'm gonna get filled on this. I might have to move it up. Um, by move it up, I mean move the center strike up to 68.25. Okay, plus 800 on the ticks. Oh man, I was just like 20 seconds too slow. So what's happening is I'm not getting filled because the indexes are just like exploding here. So let's see. You're up to plus 700 on the ticks. You made a new high on the NASDAQ. Didn't quite make the new high on the S&P, but it's going for it. The ticks have been pretty strong. The VIX is continuing to fall. The put call ratio is pretty neutral. Oh man. All right, so I was trying to get a fill at 280. It's going for a mid price of 295 to $3. So let's see, it's back down to 285. Let's see if I can get a fill on it. It might just be too late. Oh, got it. I got it. I'm honestly surprised that filled. It just filled like on a down candle. All right, so I'll go ahead and post that. John is saying in the chat that the 0 DTE big positive gamma is at 6,800. Well, JC, I hope that you're wrong because I'm targeting the other direction. But we'll see. Hopefully I didn't just get in on the high tick, which can happen, but Danielle, are you long Bitcoin? My husband mainly does all the crypto, to be honest. We have he has the crypto accounts that he kind of manages. So yeah, we own Bitcoin. And it's funny, like he sold a bunch of it to buy our first house in 2017. And we think back on it now and it's like, oh man, that was an expensive house. Sold shares of AMD and Bitcoin to buy the house in 2017. And we think about it now and it's like so tragic. And when people ask me, like, do you ever sell your stocks? It's like, we just think about that house and it's like, man. I remember when he sold the shares of Bitcoin to buy the house, we had to explain to the mortgage company because at that time, people still didn't really know what Bitcoin was. It's like, no, I swear, it's like a digital currency. They were like, what? uh, so, anyways, yeah, I have some Bitcoin. Not as much as we did, but I don't usually trade it on a regular basis or anything. And yeah, I can look at AMD for you. I do really like AMD long term. Definitely still own shares of it, not as much as we once had. I was just waiting to see if there was any kind of continuation move, hoping I didn't just buy the high. It's like maybe I did buy the high, but it's still early. It's 12:41. So, you know, you do have to be careful when you're doing the end of day trade because You see how, like, it was hitting plus 600, hitting plus 600, everything's looking strong, but then the one thing that will stand in your way of continuation is the high on the day. So, do you see how the S&P futures, this gray right here is the overnight session, the black is the cash session. So, you have to be really careful when you're long at the end of the day if the ticker comes all the way up to the high on the day and then fails. You do not want that. Um, you can see how there was that wick hit basically where the high on the day was, and then it just got slammed down with the low ticks. So I'm gonna keep an eye out for that. But I'm still long. I'm still long. I still have my trade on. And what we want to happen when you're long at the end of the day is you want that high to be broken and then for it to just explode through the high. So for the NASDAQ, for example, do you see how the NASDAQ broke through that high on the day? And do you see how there's that blue dot right there? That's a high volume candle. So basically what happened was you broke the high on the day on high volume. So that's exactly what you want to see. You want to see the high on the day be broken on high volume and for there to be continuation through that high in order for your end of day bullish day trade to work. So I'm just going to move this over here while I watch and wait. Currently, right now, you could get a little bit better entry than I did on the end of day trade if you're still interested in doing that. Danielle, never say die. For 6,800 to happen, internals need to go neutral. Let's go back and look at Tesla. And then I'll look at AMD for you. Let me know if you have any other requests. Could you trade TSLL? I mean, yeah, for sure you could. Like I said, if you're just now joining, I've been off of work for the last week and a half, so I don't have any trades on. And I mean, this Tesla move was something that I was watching extremely closely. And I've been trying to trade it to 500 for a long time, but like I said, I didn't have any trades on the last week and a half. So I'm definitely late to the party, but I added it because it's relative strength. It's up 3%. Whenever you're trying to get into a trade and you get an alert that says this ticker is hard to borrow, that means that there are short sellers crying all over the place. So that was another reason why I did it. So we'll see if Tesla gaps up tomorrow. Could you trade TSLL? Yeah, I mean you can, but like I said, it's not the best entry here, but I'm still doing it because I'm me. So just be aware of that. Henry had a way better entry than I did since, he was the Tesla whisperer here trading it. IBIT, yeah, we can look at IBIT. Michael Burry just went long the Mag 7. If you trade TSLL, the next target's going to be up here at 25.26. Then let's look at AMD. So, I mean, AMD is just kind of having the same kind of move that we've seen. Same kind of move that we've seen in a lot of these other semiconductor stocks, Nvidia, AVGO. I mean, they're just kind of pulling back after this massive move that we've had. So, I mean, I don't see a problem with it in the long term. In the short term, though, I don't really like to get into directional swing trades that are below all of these moving averages on the daily chart. So you can see that there's a break through the 50 simple, you're underneath the 50 simple, you're underneath the 21 EMA, you're underneath the 8 EMA, you're underneath the 34 EMA. You have a squeeze. I think that squeeze might fail and trade down into 200. But on the longer term chart, it's like there's no reason not to have it, not to own it. I mean, I still own it. I wish I had more than I have. Let's look at the earnings grid. It's just not a very clean chart. AMD has just kind of been all over the place. It's not in a great trend like a lot of these others has had difficulties. Um, it has had difficulties after earnings. So I mean, you can see that even though it's been beating earnings, um, it's also been trading lower. So trading lower, trading lower, lower, trading lower. So I don't know. I mean, this is just one of those stocks where I just don't really see a trade for you guys on it on a short term basis. Looks like the indexes are kind of starting to fall. Looks like John put in a bearish trade. Dun dun dun. 12:48. Still have like another 4 minutes until you have that final end of day move. Okay. With app, so somebody asked, do you trade app? It's not I mean, I would trade it. I don't have a trade on it. I think it's a great ticker and a great chart. It has all of the patterns that I really like to see. You can see that there's gaps every single earnings report, and the gaps are all higher. That's super bullish. Love to see that. Um, so, I like that. You also have the pre-earnings runs. This pre-earnings run is on average up 8% in the 21 bars before earnings. So that's huge. This is one of those stickers that I like to trade before earnings and over the earnings report because it's one of those things where it's like if you can see that a stock gaps up every single quarter after earnings, like just sell it, put credit spread, you know? It's just a probabilities thing. It's like you can clearly see it gaps up every time. Could next quarter it trade lower? Yeah, that could always happen. But this is a ticker that I usually will sell a put credit spread on before earnings. But right here, I don't think I really have anything for you right in this moment. Um, it's just, it's just kind of consolidating here. We're still pretty far out from the run into earnings. Um, the run into earnings wouldn't start until January 12th. So that's a whole nother month. And then the earnings report isn't until February 11th. So at this point, it's kind of like, well, do I trade app? Yeah, I would trade it if there was a good reason to buy it. Is there a good reason to buy it right now? Not really. I mean, it's up here at the highs. You pulled back to the 21 EMA. I would just let it consolidate and give you another setup and then trade it to the upside again. But I don't really see anything for it right now. What's your favorite stock you're looking at right now? You know, I was trying to find one. I was searching all over the place. I found I was going through and doing all my research today. Man, that looks bad. Yikes. Hmm. Utter destruction here. Anytime something gets below the 200 simple, it's just no good. Utter destruction. I mean, you really don't want to see something like below the 50 simple and below the 200 simple. This looks to me like it's going to make another leg lower. I'm definitely not going to sell my Bitcoin or anything like that. But it does look like it's going to make another leg lower into 80,000. And so you can see here too, do you see how like this long term trend was broken? So you had this, really nice trend and then you see how it broke through the 50 simple. Anytime you get a 50 simple break on a weekly chart, that's no good. Um, you know, that's a major shift in trend. So I don't typically buy when that happens unless it shifts around. If you look at, for example, like Broadcom, you see how this is just maintaining a really, really nice trend. And then do you see how on Broadcom, yes, it broke the 50 simple, which is the yellow line, but then it fell to the 100, reversed, and shifted higher? That's kind of what you have to look for with Bitcoin. AVGO is one of my favorite stocks, and I'm looking for a buy in AVGO. I just don't see it yet. Taiwan Semi, don't love, again, how it broke through the 50 simple, but all of this is kinda everything is just kinda like this right now with these semiconductor stocks. I mean, they had such a great year, and they just need a little breath of fresh air. Alright, this is where the ticks have got to start picking up if my end of day trade is going to make any kind of money. It's trying. Let's go, Mr. Ticky. Okay, so Taiwan Semi did enter the run into earnings timeframe today, which is good, and it has a pre-earnings average of 4.62%. So, um, that's pretty positive. Again, I don't like buying stocks below the 50 simple on the daily chart just because it's really difficult because it's a critical area of resistance. But this stock is in a really good trend. You can see that it's gapped up after earnings every quarter except for this quarter all the way back in here, which was in April of 24. So I think Taiwan Semi is a pretty decent bet. It's not 100% perfect just because the squeeze is just kind of messed up. The squeeze triggered to the downside, then it triggered to the upside and failed. Then it went back into consolidation again. So I mean, it's not perfect, but I think it's a pretty decent one for the upside, for an upside bet. Does Tesla have a big short position? You know, I would like to ask AI that. I can't even tell you guys how much AI has just changed my life. Um, I've been in the hospital with my sister and was literally like fact checking everything with AI, and I discovered so many things that even the doctors like didn't come up with. It's like, oh, this is what it's saying on AI. You know how annoying that is, I'm sure. But I don't know. We should ask AI about the Tesla short position. Um, TTD, that just looks like utter destruction. I don't think I could do anything with that. That looks like a disaster. Yeah, I don't think I could do anything with that. Let me just go back and look at my trade. I don't know if this is gonna work here. It needs to have a Mr. Ticky's gotta get going. Come on. Come on, my friend. It's trying. Like, you see how it's trying? Like, the candle, it's like, it went higher. It went higher. And the tick, it went higher. It's like, oh, just try just a little bit. Come on. Come on. Tesla short at 3.28%. So the thing is, though, is that like Tesla is a high volume stock with a lot of shares. So it's not the same thing as like a, low volume stock. So like 3.28% on Tesla is still pretty substantial, especially because it has I'm sure, high cost to borrow. Come on, I just need it to trade higher by like $2 or $3 to make money on this. If it's below, well, if it's at where it is right now, it's not going to make any money. No. All right, there's 3 minutes left. If you want to take a stop on the SPX, now is your last chance before it cash settles. Oh, and you were saying a gap down in TTD. Sorry, I didn't see your full comment. So if you wanted to short it versus going, I definitely wouldn't go long TTD. Yeah, I can go back and look at it for a short. Look at Tesla. Boom. It's moving so fast. My butterfly isn't maturing. This just needs a little bit more time to mature. But now because the first strike is in the money, your first strike at 490 is in the money. As long as it stays up above 490, it should do just fine into tomorrow. Let's see. These ticks are lame. The buying pressure was really good when I put on the trade. It was up into here at plus 600. It looked like it was going to continue, but this is definitely one of the main things that can ruin a bullish end of day trade is when you come right up to the previous high and it just can't get through it. The market internals were, I mean, they were really strong for the most part. And we just had a nice little bump in the vol spread just 3 minutes ago, and it looked like it was really gonna come through, but it just seems a little bit too shaky here. You know, you have had the ticks down below the 0 line. We're starting to get just a little bit of downside pressure. We have another minute left, so my end of day trade is probably not gonna work here. It looks like maybe John's worked. Let's see. John was betting against me to the downside, but that's okay. It's good to see you here, JC. Dribble, ticky. I need a simpler dictionary. Oh, come on. All right. So somebody did a chat GPT on Tesla. Approximately 78.3 million shares are currently sold short. Short interest as a percentage of shares outstanding, 2.35%. Short percent of float, roughly 2.69% of float. Short interest has risen over recent months from lower figures to a current 78 million share level. This level of short interest remains relatively low for a mega cap stock, both in absolute and float percentage terms, compared to many historically heavily shorted stocks. Short interest indicates modest bearish positioning, not unusually high. Interesting. Short ratio of 1 day implies short sellers could cover positions fairly quickly without requiring extreme price moves. Great. Thank you. That's really helpful. That's interesting because, the platform said that it was hard to borrow. So typically when you get that hard to borrow alert, that usually only comes up when there's like a greater than average number of shares outstanding, and it's typically coming up like when there's a short squeeze. Boom shakalaka. All right. Well, it looks like at least you guys made money with John. So it looks like John got a 90-cent fill on the puts and it cash settled at 990. uh, great job, John. Well, my trade didn't work because I was not betting on 6,800. Um, great job. Nice reversal. How many years did you trade to get this edge? I mean, it mainly has to do with the market internals. Looking back and just seeing like what I could have done differently. I mean, I think the main thing is just by the time John came in and was looking at the downside, I was already long. So I mean, I wasn't really gonna just close out my position and shift directions, which I guess I could have done. Um, but I think the main thing here is that, I was getting long right around the 230 print when the ticks were up at the 500, 600 area, which is typically the way that I look at this. Everything was looking pretty smooth, looking pretty strong. You had high volume, market movement going on here. But then by the time John came on, that was when the ticks really shifted. So the ticks, you can see that they went from blue to red right around that point. Um, and then they were not able to get up above that plus 600 level. So, you know, typically with the end of day trade, you do need, once you come up here to this previous highs, you need it to be able to break up through that plus 600 level, and then you need it to break up through here. So I was looking at this thinking, okay, the Nasdaq made a new high on the day. You can see the Nasdaq made a new high on the day on high volume. So the S&P is probably going to follow, but that's just not what happened. So there was a reversal. I think the main thing with this that was the biggest sign was just the VIX. So the VIX started to shift, which I'm sure is one of the main things John was looking at. Whenever you see the VIX kind of shift like that, that is a sign that the market's going to start pulling back. The put call ratio, nothing really there. But then the vol spread was pretty bullish until that last candle. So, anyways, that's kind of my overview on all of that. But thanks you guys for joining me today. Hope everybody had a great Tuesday, and I will be back with you tomorrow on Wednesday.